So, welcome everybody. For those who know me, I'm Casey D'Amato, founder of Certified PA Consulting. We've been around since 2009, and we're a team of PAs that have various business experience. So, we have experience in clinical practice ownership, in non clinical business ownership. We also are the leading experts in salary negotiations. And we're here to help advance the PA and the NP profession and medical profession as a whole. And our goal is to educate and empower PAs, NPs, and physicians to understand the dynamics of professional development. So whether that is leadership roles, whether that is negotiating win-win salary structures, or whether that is business concepts, whether that be side hustle, clinical business or clinical practice ownership, or non-clinical business ownership, we're here to answer those questions for people who want to advance their career, want to advance the profession as a whole, and do things that are bigger and better, in our opinion. So I'm going to introduce Catherine Warner. She is a PA. She owns her own practice. She's our lead consultant and lead expert when it comes to PAs and practice ownership. She's owned her own practice for a number of years now, a very successful practice. And she works with PAs both one-on-one and in a group setting for to help them get their own clinical practice up and running, started in even just a matter of a few months with very little expense and very little overhead to get up and running. So Catherine is really the leading expert when it comes to everything clinical practice related, especially when you're going from thinking about it, just wanting to do it, taking those first steps and getting all of your ducks in a row, getting up and running and seeing that very first patient in just a matter of a few months. And today she's going to talk a little bit, a few points she's going to bring up about work-life balance as a practice owner, as a PA practice owner. So she's going to just talk through a few things from her experience, from her client's experience related to work-life balance. And then we're going to open up for questions. So feel free to write questions in the chat, and you're welcome to come off camera when we are opening up for Q&A. So without further ado, I will welcome Catherine Warner to share her insight and expertise on work-life balance as a PA practice owner.
Awesome, Casey. Thank you. So yeah, one of the things that I really love and that drew me to practice ownership was just kind of the flexibility there. We definitely, as a practice owner, there's a lot of work and effort and time that goes into it. But because you're the owner, you get to structure that whatever way works best for you. So with that flexibility, you can kind of create that life balance a little easier than sometimes you can if you're working for somebody else. There's definitely pros and cons to that flexibility. I'll kind of start with the cons because that list is shorter, but with that flexibility, it can kind of logistically get a little challenging. It's a little bit more, you've got to make those decisions. You've got to manage that schedule. And especially if it's changing around other things that you've got going on, it can be a little more challenging in that way, but there's a lot of pros to it. You can, really set that up however works best for you. That may be like for me, it's generally around my kids' schedules, but for other people, it may be, around rhythms or self-care that work best for them. So in kind of thinking about how to balance that though, there's some different concepts that I kind of keep in mind. One of those is just scheduling. Like, how do you schedule in a way that allows you that balance? One, scheduling everything, scheduling those things into the calendar pretty meticulously, makes a big difference there. Another thing I really like to think about is kind of planning backwards. So I start with how much money do I need to make in a year? And from there, I figure out how many hours I need to work in a year. And then I can kind of use that math to figure out the number of hours I need to work. I always plan in a pretty good margin of error there just to make sure. But from that set block of hours that I know I need to work in a year, from there I can get creative. I can really schedule those in however I want. So in thinking about that, I like to think about the yearly rhythms. Are there times that I want to be off work? For me, summer, I work a lot less because my kids are out of school. I take off all of Christmas and Thanksgiving. So I definitely, dial back those. So I schedule in those big blocks that I want to have more available. For me, that's the priority. And so then I plug in where I do want to work, and I take that remainder of hours that are left and I block it into the calendar there. Um, And that's how I plan out my income generating time in my schedule. From there, though, I've also got to block in admin time because as a practice owner, that income generating client facing time is important. But there's also a lot of other work that goes on, behind the scenes. So I'll make sure that I block in time for that. So I generally put in 1 day a month. That's a solid block to just knock out a whole bunch of bigger admin tasks. That may be getting my accounting in order, getting stuff ready for taxes, planning a marketing strategy that I want to implement. Just those things that need a little bit more focus. Every week, I plan in half a day to make sure that I've got some other time to work on that. And generally, I set aside about 30 minutes a day just to check in and make sure that admin stuff is going smoothly. And that's not necessarily how you would have to do it, but those are just general ideas. For people thinking about, okay, I want to start a practice because I'm interested in that work-life balance, just kind of how you can make that work and how you can have that flexibility and freedom in that schedule. So I think that's one way that you can kind of create that work-life balance. Another thing that's super helpful is to really set up a lot of systems. Systems are kind of the key to bigger projects and kind of making things work. With less brain power so that you can do more things. So creating those systems that eliminate any non-necessary tasks or automate them so that you're not having to use your brain power, your time to stay on top of those. I use a ton of different systems there, and that's one thing that I really like to do when I'm talking through things with new practice owners is to figure out where we could use systems more efficiently to kind of ease the burden for them, and then figure out how to implement that really well so that they can be more efficient with their time and hopefully make more money too. Um, so we've talked about scheduling, we've talked about systems. Another thing that really helps with that work-life balance is delegation. So one big concern that I hear from people about, taking on a practice or thinking about ownership is like, gosh, there's so much I'm going to have to do. Am I always going to have to be on and available? And I mean, there's definitely, especially early on before you have the money to hire people, there is a little bit of that. I can't just step away the same way that I could when I worked for somebody else. But over time, and because of my systems, I have been able to delegate a lot of things. And so finding those people that can fill the needs or those things that you're not enjoying doing that are not necessarily like your area of expertise or income generating that you have to do can be huge. So again, in talking with new practice owners, one thing that we like to do is really, you may not be at the place to delegate immediately when you start, but as your clientele grows and your patient load grows, the income grows, and then you can kind of like nicely start transitioning some admin tasks to other people. But we kind of plan that in advance and we start thinking pretty early on about what tasks, you're going to delegate, the need to delegate, who we might start thinking and tagging and kind of simmering in our brain about that delegation so that when the time comes, you're ready for it. It's not a new thing because it's delegating is a whole skill set that, you kind of have to develop and plan for. But it can be super helpful for that work-life balance. And then another thing I like to plan in is protection or self-care. So what are those boundaries we want to be really clear about? And how are we gonna, you know, put those boundaries in place so that we're not always on or we're always having to think about things. That could be set work hours that you're gonna be responsible for responding and doing things, and certain hours that you say absolutely not, I am not gonna cross that boundary, I'm not checking my phone, my email during these hours. It may be certain types of patients that you aren't going to see. There may be certain patients that you feel really confident and comfortable with, and you can choose to see those and set boundaries around those patients that you're not, or conditions or procedures or whatever it is that you just are not comfortable with or you're not enjoying even. You can set those boundaries and kind of protect your work-life balance in that way. We can also build in self-care into that. And so that generally works into scheduling. But it could also be like your work environment. I only do telehealth. That's a form of self-care for me. For various reasons. It could be that you really love working in person. And so you're going to structure that environment to work in person with patients as a way to kind of like take care of yourself and find fulfillment there. So there's a lot of different ways that you can really, as a practice owner, create that ideal practice environment that also really nourishes you as a person and allows you to have a really good work life balance while also having a good solid income too. So.
Yeah, I think those are great points, all great points. And I mean, really highlight it's definitely your experience as well as others and what the benefits are and the work-life balance for PA practice owners. And I think that it's important to go into practice ownership with these things in mind because if we're the owner, we have responsibilities beyond patient care. We're now overseeing the business, overseeing the marketing, overseeing the operations, paying the bills. So there's a lot more time demands on us. And so the work-life balance becomes a whole new experience compared to being a clinician and working for somebody else 9 to 5. Now, seeing patients only. And now we are seeing patients and also doing all the business, all the administrative, all the marketing, and all these other things. And so the work-life balance is it's definitely something to be intentional about when you're starting clinical practice or really any business. So those are great points, Catherine, that you made. Really, really great points. And, I know that you've helped so many people one-on-one in private consultations get their practices up and running, as well as Practice Building Blueprint, which is an amazing 4-month program that you developed to help people go from the concept or just the thought of starting their practice to actually seeing their first patient. And I think that's, we don't talk about it enough and highlight enough what amazing resource you are for PAs and NPs and even physicians who want to start their own practice, who maybe have been working for somebody else and they feel like it's time to spread their wings and hang their own shingle. And so, I just want to commend you for all that you do and give back to the profession to help people navigate and understand everything from the legalities to the regulatory to, how to get up and running for very little cost and upfront investment, and how to take those steps and get up and running very, very quickly. And so I just want to give you a little shout out, and we're so honored to have you as part of the team at Certified PA Consulting. And for anybody who's watching this video here tonight, or maybe watching on a replay, if you ever have questions about owning your own practice, we have a library of other videos that Catherine hosts or we host together that answer a lot of questions about practice ownership. And we also, host very regularly these live events where you can come on and ask questions. We're about to open up for questions here in a couple of minutes, and you can get any questions answered, and that's totally free, of course. And if you have something more private and you want to dive deeper, if you email team at Certified PA Consulting, you will get Katie from our team, and she'll answer questions and point you in the right direction of how to get in touch with Catherine, how to schedule a private one-on-one 1-hour session with Catherine, where Catherine can dive into your personal situation and your exact next steps. And if you're you're like, I want to be ready this calendar year, I want to be seeing patients. What do I do? How do I do it? Practice Building Blueprint is a perfect program for you. And, Katie from our team can answer all the questions about that program, how it works, what it costs, what's entailed, all the frameworks and all the resources and tools that you get as part of that program. So don't be shy, whether you're here tonight or whether you're watching on the replay. Please feel free to reach out to us anytime, here on our FAQ sessions that we host. If you're not getting notified of these videos and these live webinars, make sure you're on our email list. Again, you can subscribe to that at certifiedpaconsulting.com, or you can email team at certifiedpaconsulting.com.